The headline screams that Iran has shut down Hormuz, or at least threatens to do so immediately. The reality is a strategic bluff. Closing the Strait of Hormuz isn't a weapon Tehran can effectively use. It functions as a suicide pact that guarantees their own regime collapse and invites immediate military retaliation from Washington. This video explains why Tehran prefers a calibrated dance of threats over an actual blockade, because in this game, opening the channel keeps them alive while closing it ensures they lose everything. To understand why you are not seeing headlines about a total blackout despite rising tensions between Trump's administration and the Iranian leadership, we must look past the noise to the incentives driving both sides. The core of this conflict is that Iran's primary leverage remains the threat of disruption rather than the act itself. While Tehran has utilized drones and naval mines to harass shipping lanes since April 2026, a permanent closure would sever their own lifeblood. The global market relies on Hormuz for roughly 15% of its oil supply. Cutting this off triggers immediate price spikes that destroy Iran's export revenue, which is the regime's only survival mechanism against sanctions. This creates what we call economic suicide. If Tehran were to actually close the waterway, they would cut off their own ability to sell fuel and buy essential goods, accelerating internal instability while simultaneously inviting overwhelming force from the United States. The strategic reality here is not an inevitable blockade, but a calculated dance where both sides maintain the threat without crossing the line. Iran knows that once the bluff becomes reality, it loses all its value as leverage for future negotiations. The military landscape further complicates any notion of a successful long-term shutdown. Despite aggressive rhetoric from hardline factions in Tehran, they lack the capacity to permanently block the waterway against U.S. naval superiority. The United States retains the operational ability to clear mines and escort traffic through the strait within days or even hours. This means that while Iran can cause temporary disruption, a blockade would be shattered by force long before it could achieve its strategic objectives. Consequently, Iran's strategy has shifted toward maritime coercion, testing limits rather than crossing them, because they know they cannot win a prolonged war of attrition against the U.S. Navy. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. This brings us to the divergence in stakes that defines the current standoff. For Washington under President Trump, the goal is lowering fuel prices and ending the conflict quickly without significant casualties or political fallout at home. Even limited military engagements involving special operations could trigger domestic backlash regarding American lives lost abroad. Conversely, for Tehran, this is an existential struggle for regime survival. Iran's leadership believes they can outlast American public impatience if they keep the threat credible without triggering a full-scale invasion that would topple their government entirely. The current friction over nuclear inspections serves as the fulcrum of this tension. Washington has proposed a 20-year freeze on enrichment activities, while Tehran offers only single-digit years in return. This is not just about uranium production. It is fundamentally about how long Tehran can maintain its bluff before being forced to concede on oil flow control and broader security guarantees. Negotiations are stalled because the United States fears that lifting sanctions without strict, long-term verification leaves them vulnerable to a future shutdown of Hormuz once more weapons or leverage become available. The stakes mismatch explains why neither side is moving toward all-out war despite the shouting matches in the press. Washington's strategy has shifted from broad regime change goals to maritime coercion. This approach effectively means blockading the blockaders, restricting traffic only to Iranian ports, while ensuring global shipping remains unimpeded by force if necessary. The United States does not need a full-scale invasion of Iran because they do not have to close Hormuz themselves. They simply ensure it stays open through superior naval presence and rapid response capabilities. Iran's leadership understands that their survival depends on this balance. They can harass ships, threaten closure, and engage in proxy activities without triggering the nuclear option or total war. By keeping the threat alive but unacted upon, they maintain a price floor for oil prices that benefits them economically while avoiding the regime-ending consequences of an actual blockade. If they were to close Hormuz, they would lose their only bargaining chip forever and face immediate destruction. The 20-year freeze proposed by Washington represents an attempt to remove this threat permanently from the table. However, Iran views such a long-term concession as unacceptable because it effectively locks them into permanent vulnerability without guaranteeing that sanctions will never return or that their regional influence won't be curbed in other ways. The single-digit year counteroffer is a tactic to preserve flexibility and keep the bluff viable for years to come. This dynamic reveals how global energy prices are actually stabilized, not by peace treaties but by mutual fear. Both sides understand that crossing the line destroys them both. Washington fears domestic backlash over casualties and rising gas prices. Tehran fears regime collapse from economic strangulation or invasion. This shared interest in avoiding total disaster creates a fragile stability where threats are exchanged as currency rather than acts of war being executed. The current situation is not about whether Iran will attack, which implies a binary choice that does not reflect the reality on the ground. It is about understanding the incentive structure that keeps the channel open. The Strait of Hormuz functions like a dial used for leverage rather than an on-off switch for war. As long as both sides maintain their respective red lines and understand the cost of crossing them, the status quo will hold even amidst heightened rhetoric. When leaders announce sanctions or threats in this region, the headline is rarely the whole story. The question is, who designed the incentive, who cannot afford to walk away, and what options still looks rational on each side. Today we read these moves as strategy rather than a morality play. We see that Tehran prefers a calibrated dance of threats over an actual blockade because in this game, opening the channel keeps them alive while closing it ensures they lose everything. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.